Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This week's show, we're talking about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Witch Watch Season 1, Episode 11. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So we have the opening where it's starting to rain, and obviously Khan and Morihito are concerned about the prophecy. So it's like, right, we're going to leave school as quickly as possible because it has to deal with a dog, rain, and the school. So Khan is going to kind of investigate, and he ends up finding Keigo getting beaten up by this guy. The guy wants Keigo's shoes, and Keigo's like, yo, you used to be so different. We went to the same middle school, but why are you so different? Well, it turns out he's taken a special candy called a drop. Basically, it's been infused with magic, and it removes a person's inhibitions. And so I love the guy was talking all that smack, and then Khan ties him up, hog ties him, and has him hanging up. I will tell you, I was a little suspicious of Keigo, and it immediately went away. But the moment they brought up the whole wolf conversation, and there's just this very plain look on Keigo's face, and he's very quiet in the background as he's processing all this stuff is happening. I don't know. It was something suspicious where I was like, he's not going to be wolf, is he? As we find out he is later on, but we'll get to that when we get to it. But my immediate thought was I felt like something was suspicious in that moment, but then I immediately moved on from it. It wasn't until later on where he's like, yo, I'm so glad you trust me. And I was like, that feels like a red flag. That feels like that's set up for him to stab you in the back. Now, whether that was going to be him willingly, whether he later on gets controlled, because later on, there's a list you have to reach out for. You have to sign out this form, and basically Wolf will reach out to you and he'll drop off some drops for you. And Keigo signs up for it to give them information. I was like, okay, so either he's going to be a bad guy the entire time, or he's going to sadly get turned into an enemy against them because he ends up taking the candy or something. I wasn't quite sure. We have Nemu officially meeting Nico and Morihito, and she's so embarrassed because Nico's like, oh my God, look at this house. It's so big. There's this, there's that. There's even a big bath. And she's like, I know already. You guys don't know, but guys were petting me not too long ago, but I was in the form of a cat. And she's, because they probably, she probably danced around the whole, hey, I knew exactly where to find you guys before, because not only have I been to your school, I've also been to Morihito's house, but let's not have that conversation. So she's still playing coy, but it's she warns them about the warlock, and we kind of get a breakdown and explanation of it. And I brought this up last episode. My head, when I always heard the term warlock, I thought it was kind of supposed to be witches are female magic users and warlocks are male people. But then I never fully knew, but then I thought warlock and wizard might be interchangeable. The way they're using it in this series is that witches are naturally good. They're the white and the yin yang of it all, the good, whereas warlocks are the black, the bad. I thought it was interesting because Nemu was I have the alert magic, and they all learn it at a very young age. And I guess because it's meant to alert you to the presence of a warlock. I thought it was interesting because I was thinking it was interesting that Nico never came across her. But to be fair, Nemu only came across her because she stumbled across the warlock. So it's so it's unless you're in close enough proximity, plus what Nemu discovers later on, because she goes looking in the woods for the place but can't find it, but it turns out it's a pocket dimension. She's like, right, while I was scared and running away in my cat form, I most likely bumped into it without even realizing it. So it's in a pocket dimension, so you probably can't sense her. And it seems like even when she's here out and about in the world, that's not in that pocket dimension, you still can't sense her unless it's probably a certain proximity you have to be near a warlock. It's also interesting too because the whole conversation about witches can easily go over and become warlocks, because going from the white to black can happen if the witch gets so stressed, or there are external situations or stimulation that causes that shift to make you go bad. Because it seems like Nico's basically kind of like the Scarlet Witch in this series. What I mean by that, if you're familiar with Marvel, specifically the MCU, because I don't know if this is how the Scarlet Witch situation works in the comics, but they set it up like this in a TV show. I mean, in the MCU with WandaVision, that Wanda is the Scarlet Witch. She's a powerful witch that's born once every 1,000 years. And it turns out Nico's the exact same way. It's like, you are extremely powerful. You just don't know how powerful you really are. And there's been instances of it where it's like Nico told people she was a witch and she lost a lot of friends because of it. Then there's also like her parents splitting up, made her kind of erupt her power and blew up their house, which obviously Morihito understands better than anyone, but he learned how to channel his powers and during his training learn how to keep a cool head, which I thought was interesting because there's a line from Khan, because Nemu was like, oh my god, he's so cool-headed, and Khan's like, oh, you think he is? Because Khan knows how important Nico is and how important his duty is to protect her, that it's like, I see what Morihito's like, that rage is burning beneath him, and literally hard cut to the scene of him punching a wall to kind of get information out of a student. So it's like, yeah, that rage was like there underneath, but it's like Khan was able to kind of see through it, because after last episode, I believe, they've kind of come to see like Morihito for what he really is. I mean, really the only emotions they really see was his laughter about something and his anger. But Nico got to see the more multifaceted angles to Morihito, even though he doesn't always present them. Because it's interesting, because Nemu talks about how witches used to be out in the open, but it's become more and more of a rare thing these days. In fact, she's like, even my mom only like lets like business clients know the truth about her circumstances. So, and we also knew that she kind of came from a prominent family because she made kind of a whole point of it, like when we first got introduced to Nemu. But I also love like her fascination with Nico and Morihito, because he's like, right, I'm going to protect you no matter what, so always stay by my side. And Nico's so ecstatic about it. She's walking away being like, oh my god, the heart in her eyes. And Nemu's just jealous because she's like, is this relationship between a familiar and a witch? She's like, I want this, I want it so bad, because that's kind of what she was aiming for Morihito, because he's an ogre and that's super rare, having one as a familiar. But also like, she wanted a powerful familiar to kind of have that connection with, but she sees like, Morihito and Nico's connection. But circling back, Khan ends up running into Wolf, because Wolf probably heard about, oh, you're looking for me. So we didn't get to see it, but Khan ends up getting beat. It wasn't an easy fight, because even Wolf still got beat up a little bit. Granted, Khan got the worst of it, but that's specifically because he got back up to fight Wolf, because he was like, yo, like, this guy, he's working with the person after Nico. I want to protect Nico. Like, the fact is, I don't want to lose to Morihito, so I got to prove my strength, but also I got to look out for him because he is my friend. And so he kept fighting Wolf and got severely beat up. It's interesting timing, because there's a character in Go-Go Loser Ranger who has a regenerative ability, but there's a limitation to how much this character can heal. It has to be the more recent the wound is, it's the more recent wound. So it's say like a character, it's an example I used in my review of the episode. Say like a character gets their left arm cut off and then their right arm cut off. They can only regenerate the right arm because that's the more recent wound. It's like a very like specific time window it has to be done too. So Nico's magic is in that same capacity. Like, they could heal, but the problem is it can only be the more recent wounds, and even then, like, healing that takes up a lot of energy too. So just interesting little things we're learning magic wise and stuff. Because we also learned that Nico has a limiter on her. All witches do, because witches aren't meant to use their powers for like offensive purposes. So to prevent them from ever like using too much power, their powers like have a limiter on them, which you could only assume eventually, maybe when Nico becomes a full witch, when that limiter be removed, or a certain situation will probably cause her to remove her own limiter, and will probably set forth her like using all of her power. We'll see how that ultimately ends up coming about. But since they introduced that limiter, eventually it's going to get broken at some point in time in the show, and there's probably going to be initial disastrous parts to that, like the power might be too overwhelming for Nico, and that might slide her more and more closer to the dark side type of situation. Either way, we also catch up with, go back to Morihito and Nico as they're interrogating students, more so Morihito, trying to get information out of them, chasing after that one guy. And I love that she tried to like make the ground slimy, but it kind of backfired on because this guy's a skater. But then Keigo comes in because he's a former skater too, which are like, okay, so that showcases the opening where we see him kind of gliding a little bit because he used to be a figure skater in the past. We learned that he got in a car accident with his mom and his leg still works normally, but he can't do sports. Now, I guess it's a combination of it's probably both a physical wound, like, yes, it makes it harder to do what he wants to do, but it's probably also an element of, it's probably a psychological wound as well. But yeah, he wants to help them out because he's like, after that accident, he's like, I kind of became very reclusive. I didn't want to do anything, but it all changed the moment he started hanging around Morihito, Nico, and Khan. And it's like, you guys are and he kind of stutters it out, but says like, my friends. And I hope that I'm glad that you guys can trust me. Like I said at the time, that read as super suspicious to me. You have Nemu finding her way back to the Enchanter and Wolf, but she ends up getting caught and put to sleep. She's initially like, oh, I'm going to kill her. But I thought it was interesting that Wolf took an interest of like, no, whether I kill the cat or not, that's up to me. I think he has a soft spot for animals. And so I think in that moment, it's just like that took over. Who he really is at his core took over in that moment versus like the way he presents himself as Wolf, like the familiar that the Enchanter needed him to be. But yeah, he's ready for his fight with Morihito. There's also the whole thing of like, the more drugs he's spreading out, these people become dogs, and they're going to become basically puppeteer people for the Enchanter to use, along with Wolf, to go after Nico. And so the plan is that Morihito will deal with Wolf, but won't do it on his own. I thought it was really neat because Khan's like, hey, he's just as strong as you, so it'll probably be a pretty even fight. But Morihito's thinking of was like, that's why you fought him, isn't it? Like, your strategy wouldn't be a head-on fight, but you did that because you wanted to see how strong he was for my sake. You wanted to try and get as much information so that I could be ready when the time came. And Khan's like, no, I was just being stubborn and had nothing to do with you, even though you were a part of the motivating factor of why he did what he did. So I thought that was really sweet, and just can't be honest with his feelings. But yeah, then Keigo shows up and they kind of put their plan into action. But once again, Keigo was super I was suspicious the moment Keigo brings up like, oh, can a witch heal wounds? I guess he wanted to get validity from like, because I guess he was almost still looking for another means of handling his situation without relying on the Enchanter. But Morihito told him like, yo, it's hard to do that like the older a wound is. And he's like, oh, okay. But he was also like, no, like I wasn't implying. And Morihito's like, right, sorry I made that assumption. But for him, it's like, no, like Nico would have been happy to help you, but she doesn't know if she'll be able to. But then the moment he's like, oh, I'm going to stop the time I shoot him, like, what are you up to? Morihito steps into the trap, like that sends him to that pocket dimension. And then he follows suit. And we find out who Keigo really is. He's from a family of werewolves. So he himself is, in fact, a familiar. I thought so. I was like, there's no way, like, the main characters of the show are all going to be regular. Like, because at first I figured Keigo was going to be something because he was in the intro. Was never expecting him to be a werewolf. You know, it's like, right. He brings up the fact is, like, over the generations, how much the different, like, familiars have changed. Ogres have lost their horns. Tengu have lost their wings. And wolves don't no longer turn into full-blown werewolves. Their form, it's basically like, it's like a Super Saiyan state. It's what they look like. And instead of like the old school thing of, yeah, like they look at a full moon and transform, all they need to do is look at a crescent moon and it transforms them. So, yeah, like I said, I think that was an interesting twist and reveal of, yo, he is Wolf. Would have never thought that. I figured he was a familiar, but then it seemed like he was a regular human, which I thought was interesting. But she had regular humans around her, like her good friends at school are regular humans, but still I would have thought like he seems to be a main character, and everyone around her that's a main character isn't a normal human, because even like one of those characters is going to be Nemu. So it's like, that's what I was thinking. We saw that the enchanter approached him. Now the question is, how long ago did she approach him? Well, because obviously the wolf that like Nemu ran into Wolf like last episode, so it begs the question like, but I mean the way they kind of imply it makes it kind of seem like before he even approached Nico. I mean, really, it's interesting because Morihito's the one that approached Nico, but I mean not Nico, sorry, approached Keigo. But it makes you wonder, was there some extenuating circumstance? Like, was there a little more magic behind that happening? Because it was that episode where he just like randomly approached Keigo that I'm like, huh. But then Keigo was just probably like, oh, the moment he found his end naturally, he just slowly but surely hung around them more and more to gain their trust. So it is kind of sad. Like, we know a motivating factor for him is like the enchanter is promising to heal him, because it is that thing of, I think once he quit figure skating, like he lost a part of himself that he's never been able to get back. And I do believe there is some sincerity with like, hey, you guys made me feel good, we're friends. And I think he does feel bad about betraying them. But for him, it's like he feels like he's kind of nothing without it. Because we don't know enough about Keigo. Like there might be deeper seeds to that, like him being a figure skater and why it was so important to him. Because we know his mom was in the car accident, but we don't know if his mom's still alive, and maybe like he attributes it all to guilt, because I think it was like I think he even said like they were on their way to a competition when the car accident happened, so he probably does blame himself. So it's like it's got to mean something. It can't all be for nothing. Then like like I said, especially if his mom died, that guilt is probably what's making him go like, no, this is an opportunity to kind of get back some of what I lost. It's got to matter. It's got to mean something in the end. It's his way of kind of filling that void inside of himself from both maybe losing his mom. Like I said, I'm really leaning into the whole whether or not leaning into his mom not being alive, but she might be. But that could be influencing all of this. So it's like Keigo's not bad. It's just the witch is tempting him. The warlock specifically, enchanter, is tempting him with what he wants most, and just tempting him to do some bad, given to his selfish desires, So yeah, next episode is going to be part 2 to this. Obviously, Morihito and Keigo are going to clash. It's going to be interesting to see how this whole situation plays out, as an army of dogs are after Nico, who's only got Khan by her side, whereas Morihito's separated and going up against Keigo as Wolf. And then you also have Nemu, who's I'm assuming still in that same place as well, just asleep and knocked out. Though she was conscious enough to kind of know what was going on, but still like in a deep sleep enough state. So it's going to be interesting to see where the next episode ends up taking us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.